Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Pijana Vallabha Girivaratari Pijana Vallabha Girivaratari Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shuddha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Asa Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 11, Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj. We're on text 30. Tvam pratyag atmani tada bhagavat yaranta Ananda matra apapanna samasta shakta Bhaktim vidaya paramam shananaikar avidya Grantim vibesya simamahamiti prarudham Tvam pratyag atmani tada bhagavadananta Ananda matram apapanna samasta shakta Bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakaira vidya Grantim vivesya simamahamiti prarudham Tvam pratyag atmani tada bhagavatananta Anandamatramapapanna samasta shaktau Bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakar avidya Grantim vivesya simamahamiti parudham. Please chant. You want to do it, Ben? If you want to try. So word by word translation. Tvam, you, pratyat atmani, unto the Supersoul, tada, at that time, bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anante, who is unlimited. Ananda Matre, the reservoir of all pleasure. Upapanna, possessed of. Samasta, all. Shaktau, potencies. Bhaktim, devotional service. Vidaya, by rendering. Paramam, supreme. Shanakai, very soon. Vidya, of illusion. Grantim, the knot. Vibetsyasi, you will undo. Mama, my. Aham, I. Iti, thus. Prarudham, firmly fixed. Translation. Thus regaining your natural position, so this is Lord Manu, Prabhu calls him Lord Manu, speaking to Dhruva Maharaj, advising him. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was already a liberated person because at the age of 5 years he had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even though liberated, he was for the time being afflicted by the illusion of Maya, thinking himself the brother of Uttama in the bodily concept of life. The whole material world is working on the basis of I and mine. This is the root of attraction to the material world. If one is attracted by this root of illusory conceptions, I and mine, he will have to remain within this material world in different exalted or nasty positions. By the grace of Lord Krishna, the sages, and Lord Manu reminded Dhruva Maharaj that he should not continue this material conception of I and mine. Simply by devotional service unto the Lord, his illusion could be eradicated without difficulty. Om Gyanatipanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuvan Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Kam Karivachalam Pangam Langaite Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditaranam Vanshaka Padubhishta Kripa Sandhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So read the translation again. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure and who lives in all living entities as a super soul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. So this is I and my. So, Lord Manu, he is advising Dhruva Maharaj how to get back to his original position, or get back to the situation in which he was before, of you could say pure consciousness or pure Krishna consciousness, and he says that by engaging in service, engaging in devotional service to Krishna, that's how Dhruva Maharaj could rise back up to that position, his original position, natural position, as a servant of Krishna. And specifically, he says that by devotional service, one will forget the illusory understanding of I and mine. I and my. So what is exactly that referring? That's referring to I am this body, that false conception that I am this body, and that everything in relation to this body is mine. So people become very attached to their possessions. Well, first of all, they become attached to their body because they think it's them. And second, they become attached to things in relation to their body because they think that those things are theirs. They belong to them. And also, it goes even as far as this conception goes even as far as he's saying you're afflicted by the illusion of Maya, thinking himself the brother of Uttama in the bodily concept of life. So he was thinking, Dhruva Maharaj was thinking, oh, Uttama is my brother. So that is also a material conception. Interesting enough. And the idea of brother and family and so on. Of course, that doesn't mean that we neglect them. We don't neglect our family. We could try to help them in Krishna consciousness and help them make advancement in some ways. But to really, the materialists, they really get into this idea that, okay, this is my family. And a lot of the times they don't really go beyond that. It's just my family, my friends, and it's just all connected to them, their bodies. And so the idea is to see the bigger picture in which actually everyone is our family. It means the whole world. Every single person. I mean, even the Prabhupada would say, even like the animals, species, there was some... There was what Saint Francis of Assisi said, my brother bird and all that. So that's the spiritual understanding. This is a big thing, or a big issue, you could say, that people fall under, that people fall into, that I am this body and everything in relation to this body is mine. And a lot of the times this particular conception, you could say, multiplies exponentially? Is that the word? Exponentially? Okay. Multiplies unlimitedly. And in this world, in relation to attraction between men and women. And specifically, at least in cultured societies, people get married. Family life. Now, from the Vedic conception, or from the conception of the Bhagavatam, family life is not evil. Family life is not sinful. So those devotees who are engaged in family life, they could feel relief, or those who plan to be in family life, they could feel some relief that it's not sinful and it's not evil. It's actually good and needed in so many ways for the upkeep of the world's sanity. Good family, good families. Although those who engage in it and those who will engage in it, they have to keep in consideration that not to fall under the misconceptions that, I am this body, and everything in the body's everything in relation to the body is mine. In other words, get so entrapped in, and you could say, a materialistic understanding of family life, in that one becomes very attached to their body and also their possessions, house and children and possessions and all that. And practically speaking, that's what a lot of people end up doing with their lives. They just try to, have some, I guess people still try to have families. And if they do that, they get really absorbed in that. And they fall into illusion. Now, of course, it's not just people who are in family life that may fall into illusion, but also the renunciates may fall into illusion. It means those who aren't in family life. And they fall into illusion in different ways as well. Means the monks and so on, they fall into illusion in different ways. And they may also become attached to their room or to their possessions or to their prestige, and everybody may be offering respect in so many different ways. Not so many different ways, but in some ways people may be offering respect, and they may become attached to just very insignificant things. So it's not that it's just somebody's in family life. Also, the renunciates. Everybody has there's a danger for everybody. And there's a story in relation to that of, I believe it was Ramanujacharya. Yeah, Ramanujacharya. He was a great devotee, great spiritual master. And he was in the... Anyways, he did so much service and built temples and so on. Great sannyasi. So he wanted to make a point, and he wanted to make a point of showing who was really more advanced. The renunciates, or the ones who, monks and so on, or some householders in this particular case. So what happened is he asked one of his disciples, okay, you go down to the river, and there's a bunch of monks there, and they all had their gamshas on, like little towels, thin towels you bathe in the river with, what you're wearing. So they're all, in the river and taking their bath and, probably chanting their mantras, like their Gayatri mantras and so on, meditating. So then this disciple, he went and he got all their cloth, like their dhotis and kurtas and chadars and different things, and he switched them up. So he switched them around. So in other words, when all these people came out, all the monks came out, they couldn't tell, oh, is that my cloth? Is that my dhoti? And then they started fighting, actually. Oh, hey, you're still in my cloth. And then they started fighting about it. So you could say it's quite a mundane thing. I mean, you're fighting over it. You're supposed to be detached, not fighting over, you stole my dhoti or something. So that was that. So he understood, oh, these monks are kind of attached. I mean, they're just attached to such an insignificant thing. So then Ramanujacharya asked his disciple to go to one of his householders' houses. Means a couple, married couple, husband and wife. So they went there, the disciple went there, and he actually broke into their house somehow. And he went into the house, and then the wife was there sleeping. And especially traditionally, and even nowadays, women would wear quite expensive jewelry. They'd be wearing, and one devotee was telling me, I mentioned this some time ago in class, but we mentioned this pastime story, but one devotee was telling me, she was telling me that there's certain pieces of jewelry a woman's supposed to wear, and she said there's gold bangles and rings and earrings, nose ring, bangles around the ankle, and then on the toes, and all these types of things. Anyways, whatever. So, but it was all gold. I mean, these are very expensive, or at least more expensive than other material. So so he went there, this disciple, and he actually started taking off her bangles and taking her jewelry, earrings, and then she was just laying there and letting him, take the expensive jewelry. She was also a disciple of Ramanujacharya. So then all of a sudden she moved to the other side, and she moved to the other side so that. Anyways, we'll get to that in a minute. So she moved to the other side. So then this disciple, I mean, he was in her house, breaking in her house, and I mean, he just got scared and he just ran off. You know, he ran off, and then... So then he was waiting outside the window, and, you know, the husband came back, and then he was listening, the disciple was listening to what the husband and wife were talking about. So then this disciple of Ramanujacharya heard the wife and the husband talking, and they were talking, and she said, "Oh, something really strange happened earlier. I was sleeping, and one of the temple priests, they came and they started stealing my jewelry." And she said, "I guess they must need money." And she wasn't mad about it. She was just, "I guess they must need money." And then the husband said, "Oh yeah, what did you do?" And she said, "Well, I let him take a good amount of jewelry, and then I moved to the other side so he could take the rest." And then he got really mad, and he said, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You know, you scared him away." And then they're kind of so. And then this disciple, he understood. Oh, these devotees are more detached than those monks, because the monks were attached to their cloth. I mean, one was cloth and one was gold, so they were willing to give the gold, and they were fighting over the cloth, so they're more detached. So that's a particular case in which they're detached. Householders more detached than the brahmacharis or monks. So the idea is to not fall into that conception. We do that by engaging in devotional service, sincere devotional service. Prabhupada, when he was building the Juhu temple, it was a big fight, and anyways, I mentioned this a few days ago, but it's been on my mind. So, he said you should write a book about it. So my spiritual master is writing a book about it. But anyways, so I heard recently that when Prabhupada finally got the papers signed, so they could have the property, which was a big fight, like many years. So then Prabhupada said, he said, now we're going to start fundraising for building the big temple. And he was saying it's going to be made out of marble, and he said so many things, his plans. And then he was asking people for donations, and then some woman, she took off her gold bangle on her, or her gold was it bracelet, and she gave it to him. So that's very good, auspicious, to start off with gold. I just remembered that because of that story. So does anyone have any questions in relation to any of that, or comments so far?
It comes to my mind that to my place in Europe, Smita Krishna Maharaj is coming sometimes. He's a sannyasi from Sweden.
Yeah, I know of him.
Yeah, he's a...
Smita means smiling, and Krishna means Krishna, so it's Smiling Krishna. Yeah, his name's Smiling Krishna.
Kind of sweet person. So he just commented once, because we learned so much of the dangers of the Grihastha ashram, and there were times that whoever got married, and immediately he's in Maya, and let's try to avoid it as far as possible. It's good if you're determined to remain a brahmachari. Very nice, all respects.
Yeah.
But he just once commented, well, actually, this Grihastha ashram is a good rehearsal for Goloka Vrindavan, because you learn how to develop your relationships and emotions and all these things which are also there in the spiritual world.
Mm.
That just comes to my mind.
Yeah. Rehearsal, for the Goloka Vrindavan, for the spiritual world. Yeah, it's we have to, you could say, practice. We have to practice Krishna consciousness, and just by practicing Krishna consciousness, we're actually preparing for the spiritual world. And those who don't prepare enough, they don't go. So the idea is to prepare, to practice, and then we're ready to go. So it's like this whole idea of becoming ready to enter the spiritual world. It's not that everybody's ready to enter the spiritual world. Sometimes within certain religious systems, it's just understood that, hey, well, I believe, and I was thinking what Mukunda says, but this kind of says something funny. But anyways, I believe, and I'm a good person, whatever their definition of that is. It means I don't do anything too horrible, and therefore I just automatically go. I don't really have to do that much to go. Just kind of believe and be a good person. So of course that's good, but in relation to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is that, we really have to prepare. It's like we really have to be ready, we really have to prepare, we really have to purify our consciousness, and then we'll be invited there. We'll be invited to go, because we have to always remember that it's a place, it's a pure place that's just full of pure devotees. And so one has to become a pure devotee to go. So that's important. So preparing, and therefore Prabhu would say that, or the Vedic, the Srimad Bhagavatam and others literature, it says that death is like life's final exam. So there's so many tests, and this is like the final exam. And if you pass the exam, you could go. So the exam is, will we remember Krishna at the time of death? That's the exam. So that's why it's important to cultivate that remembrance throughout our life, so that we will remember at the time of death. Anta Narayana Smritihi, it means at the end we remember Krishna. So remember Krishna, and then we could go to Krishna. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vititattvataha taktva deham punarjanma naitimam iti surjana. So whoever understands, Krishna says, the nature, transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, they go to the spiritual world. So who remembers him? Antakale chamameva swadamukve kalevram. Whoever remembers me, they could go to the spiritual world. So that cultivation is important. And it could be a little tricky sometimes. There was one devotee I heard, he's a Prabhupada disciple, and he was a married man, happened to be married. And what happened is he was in a car. It's really, actually, it was quite frightening, but he was in a car, and then his car somehow they're stalled right on a train track. And he couldn't get out of the car, and the train was coming fast. So then what happened, he was thinking Krishna, Krishna, and he was, thinking Krishna, and then all of a sudden, right when the train was about to hit the car, he thought, what will happen to my wife? And then the train hit the car, bam, like that. Now, of course, he lived to tell it, but the point is, one of his last thoughts was that, what will happen to my wife? Now, his mind was on Krishna, then it went to his wife, so that was a difficulty, So the idea is to somehow either train our minds, and also, it's not that, just married, married devotees have that issue. I mean, whatever, brahmachari, whoever. I mean, mind could go to so many different things at the time of death. As a brahmachari, mind could go to a woman. Or vice versa. A woman, their minds could go to their husband, or a man, or whatever. So the idea is to have it go to Krishna. And for that we need a lot of training. Like a Jamil, there's a story of a Jamil in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he was a very well-behaved and cultured Brahmin. I mean, sattvic person, mode of goodness person, like a priestly type of person. And then he saw a low-class woman and man embracing each other. And Prabhupada says that the members of the Krishna, in some purports in that section, he says the members of the Krishna conscious movement, especially in the Western cities, have to see that on a regular basis. Just go downtown. I mean, we went downtown last night. Anyways, so, but he said, Prabhupada said, if the members are sincerely chanting Hare Krishna, they'll be protected. So, be protected from what? Be protected what happened to a Jamil. And what happened to a Jamil, he saw these people embracing, women and men embracing, and he became just full, like, just completely full of lust. And to the degree where he just could not control himself at all. And he said he went back to the ashram and he was just, his mind was just over-flooded with lusty desires for this woman specifically that he saw. So what happened is he actually went and he searched out that woman. And he found her, and he married her, and he gave up his nice wife, like he rejected his wife, which especially back then was just like absolutely terrible. I mean, now it's a common occurrence. I mean, 70% divorce rate, but back then it was like terrible. I mean, no one did it. Even in the 50s in America, hardly anybody did it. So he did that, rejected his wife, and married this low-class woman, and he said it did so many horrible things to get money to support his wife, and he had so many kids with her, and just became a out-and-out, just, materialistic person. And he completely forgot about his spiritual life and Krishna. But interesting enough is that because of his training, he named one of his sons Narayan, which is a name for Vishnu or Krishna, Narayan. So then when he was about to die, when he was about to leave his body, he called out to his son, Narayan. And then because of that, he was saved, actually, because the Yamadutas were coming. Anyways, it's a long story, but he was going to be dragged to like the lower regions, the hellish regions, for all of his activities. But because he called out Narayan, which is the name of God, the Vishnu Dutas came. These are the devotees who takes ones to the spiritual world. So then they were discussing the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, and they said, no, this man is innocent. It's a long thing, but the point is that Ajama got a second chance. He didn't go back to Godhead immediately from just chanting that name. But he got a second chance, and then he perfected himself and went back to the spiritual world. So it was a happy ending. So my point is, or one of my points is that it's not that, a Jamil, he just did whatever he wanted, and then he just chanted Narayan at the end, so maybe I could just do that, But that was a special case. So we shouldn't do that. We should try to cultivate it throughout our life, because we may not be as lucky as a Jamil. Of course, anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness, they're saved from a future suffering life in many ways. They're not going to be dragged down to like lower regions and stuff like that. And the last thing I wanted to say about that, about entering the spiritual world, cultivating our... Prabhupada was one time giving a class, and he said, in order to enter the spiritual world, one has to be completely free of material desires. Like zero, like no material desires. Now he looked out into the audience and he said, and then he noticed the devotees were a little discouraged and depressed, thinking, oh, completely free of material desires? That's like, I have so many desires, how can that be? How can I do that? And then Prabhupada said, okay, fine, 90%. And the devotees were still looking depressed and discouraged. Then Prabhupada went down 80, and I think it went all the way down to 70. He said, okay, 70%. And he said, whatever the case is, I have a key to the back door, so I could, let you in, So even if we're not completely free, so that's called kripa siddhi, or perfection through mercy. So Prabhupada has that ability, and also they asked Prabhupada the question: what happens if one thinks of you at the time of death, or the spiritual master? And Prabhupada said, you get the same result. You could go to the spiritual world as well. Interesting enough. So whether we're meditating on Prabhupada or Krishna. So, yeah. But whether one formally accepts, for men, because within Vedic civilization, men accept sannyas, they become sannyasis. Whether one formally accepts sannyas or not, means householders accept sannyas, or brahmacharis accept sannyas. The idea of detachment obviously has to be there. And same with women. Whatever happens in their life, this idea of detachment also has to be there. Because that is what Mahaprabhu came to, that's what he taught. He said, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshatam Eka Purusha Puranam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari Kripam Tvam Amrapadya. Yeah. So it says that, in essence, that verse is saying that Lord Chaitanya came to teach, detachment, vairagya, vidya, and knowledge of himself, and detachment. And he's an ocean of mercy, and I offer my respectful obeisances to him. So these are the principles in which all devotees operate under. Knowledge, which means spiritual knowledge, and detachment, which practically means attachment to Krishna. Because one has attachment to Krishna, they're detached from other things. So it doesn't just mean like the Mayavadi sannyasis, just detachment, but it means detachment which is sourced by attachment to Krishna. So, does anyone have any other? Yes, maybe you could pass the mic to ACE. Right? Ace, that's her name. ACE, right? Yeah. Did anyone ever call you that growing up, ACE?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, what was the first then, ACE?
I have two questions.
Okay.
Is Maya part of Krishna's energies? And how does it work? What is the purpose of it in bringing us back to God?
Okay. So Maya is, part of Krishna's energy. There's the internal energy, like the spiritual energy, and then there's the material energy. So the material energy is there, and then there's the living entity, which is us. We're like marginal, which means like in the middle. So it means we could fall either under the material energy or the spiritual energy. So devotees, they operate under the spiritual energy, and non-devotees, they operate under the material energy, which means under the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, and just material concepts of I and mine, I and this body, everything in relations mine. That's called being in Maya. So it is one of Krishna's energies, and it's specifically created to facilitate the conditioned soul's desires to forget Krishna. Because without Maya, that energy, we actually can't forget Krishna. Because we're just so connected with Krishna, we can't forget him. But Maya is created to facilitate our forgetfulness. And why would Krishna do such a horrible thing? Someone may say it's not a horrible thing Krishna did, but why would he do that? And the idea is that the reason is that Krishna wanted to facilitate our desires. Means we wanted it. And if someone says, "Well, is that really true?" I mean, like, do people really want to forget God? And of course they do. I mean, just look around, look at the world. I mean, it's a godless world in so many ways. So people want that. So it's created to help us forget Krishna, but also it's created to, Maya also imposes miseries on us, in which experiencing those miseries, it's kind of like, you wake up, or at least you inquire, like, why am I suffering? And Prabhupada gave the example. He said one time Prabhupada, he went to the Birla's house, which they were one of the richest families in all of India, like super rich, fabulously rich. So Prabhupada went there to give a talk, and the host, one of the Birlas, she wanted Prabhupada to speak on how to have a successful life, which is quite interesting because from everybody else's perspective, she was successful. She was very rich, but she still felt herself not successful. So anyways, Prabhupada went there, and he spoke on this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Daivim Prakritimashruta, Mahatmanas Tumam Parta, Daivim Prakritimashruta. Says that the great souls, they are under the protection of my divine energy, Krishna says. So Prabhupada is given the talk, and he said that in the material world, everybody's under the control, everybody's under the influence of Maya, Durga, specifically, which is personified as Durga, which you could see is a demigoddess, right? She rides on a lion? Tiger? Is it a tiger or lion? Lion. Oh, you saw both? We'll say lion. So she rides on a lion, and she or a tiger, and she has these. She has this. What is it called? The trident, and there's 3 prongs. So Prabhupada said that what she does to the living entities, to the souls who don't surrender to Krishna, she with her trident and her 3 prongs, she's jabbing them. And these 3 prongs represent the threefold miseries of material existence, from the body and the mind, from other living entities, and so on. And she does that until someone inquires and surrenders to Krishna. Now, of course, devotees still undergo those things. I mean, we are in the material world; it's just part of the package. But Durga really, turns up the pressure with people who don't surrender to Krishna. So then Prabhupada said, so the whole success in life is to transfer ourselves from the control of the material energy, which is personified as Durga, under the spiritual energy. We're under the spiritual energy. And who is that spiritual energy personified as? Srimati Radharani. Srila Prabhupada said, Srimati Radharani. Which we have Radharani here. She has her hand up like this. Don't worry. So we take shelter of Srimati Radharani, and we're under her influence, which she's actually in charge of all devotional activities. So in other words, we move under their inspiration of devotional service, or bhakti. So that's the success. So yeah, Maya is one of Krishna's energies, and Maya is there right when we turn away from Krishna. Maya is there to embrace us. And we feel, And the purpose is to, it is to help us go back to the spiritual world. And actually it says that Maya is like a prison keeper. So when we're trying to get out, she makes sure that we're qualified and sincere enough to get out. So, and if we're not, then, and that's why at least that's an explanation that's given why people give up Krishna consciousness. It's like Maya, she puts a few tests in front of them, you know, this, that, whatever it may be, puts a few tests, and then people just, Maya just defeats them. So, but people who are like strong and sincere, they just, you know, they deal with Maya's test, and eventually Maya says, okay, fine, you're not going to bother Krishna, because that's the idea that, oh, are you coming to serve Krishna, or are you coming to bother Krishna? So she's like there to, like a filter. So, yeah. All right. So, we will have breakfast now. And it will be Kanai's burritos. He came back from his trip from Utah, or wherever he went. So last week everybody was depressed and suffering from lack of burritos, so now everybody could rejoice. Maybe you haven't had these burritos before. It's like I guess it's kind of a Southern California, like a from Mexico type of preparation. So maybe you haven't had it, but anyways, we'll see. All right. Grantrad Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.